Anyway, okay. Tennessee bans on trans drag shows, gender affirming care. Head to the governor. Let's take a look. Oh my god, Mike Mushroom, do you want to come on? Do you want to come on and have like a conversation? Because honestly, we can do this over like the text thing, but like I feel like this would be a little bit more what's the word? A little bit more you know, of a cleaner conversation. If you want to, if you don't, that's fine. I'm not gonna like, you know, I'm not gonna force you anything. But like, if you'd be interested in coming on and having a talk back and forth conversation, I'd be happy to host you. But I gotta move on to the next thing because we're going in circles. The very least, talking in circles goes by a little bit faster and is interesting. Does this video actually have anything in it? I actually don't know. I haven't. Oh, this is just okay. No. Why is this always on different topics? Like why do news sites do this? It's like this isn't the same topic. Why is the video attached to it? Okay. Tennessee is set to ban some drag performances as well as gender-affirming healthcare for transgender minors after state House lawmakers sent both bills to Republican Governor Bill Lee's desk for final approval on Thursday. Tennessee Senate Bill 3, introduced in November by State Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson, seeks to... I should probably not put my fucking mouse in front of words. Seeks to amend an existing state law preventing adult-oriented businesses from operating within 1,000 feet of schools. Public parks or places of worship want to include, quote, adult cabaret performances, makes sense, which the legislation defines as performances that feature male or female impersonators who provide entertainment that appeals to a prurient interest. Ah, yes. The, okay, so not what a cabaret is then. Because a cabaret mostly is just a non-nude, like it's not a strip club, it's like almost a strip club but not quite. Right, and also male or female impersonators, so we're talking anybody who cross-dresses, which could be because they're trans, could be because they just like doing drag, could be any number of things. Yes, drag queens is disgusting. Oh my goodness. Let's see. Shows with topless dancers, go-go dancers, exotic dancers, and strippers may also be classified as adult cabaret performances under the proposed law. Johnson, in a statement to Reuters this week, said the measure should... Why is there that thing there? I'd always. Excuse me? Oh, that's weird. Anyway, Johnson, in a statement to Reuters this week, a measure should give confidence, quote, confidence to parents that they can take their kids to a public or private show and will not be blindsided by a sexualized performance. Are they... Okay. Wait, so let me get this straight. If I'm an adult and I take my kid to a family-friendly drag show, I'm not allowed as a parent to be able to assess that for my own family. Because what parents are taking their kids to cabarets? Like, okay. Also in public? What does he mean in public? Like, you're not allowed, like, you have to wear clothing in public. I'm assuming, now that I think about it, he's basically talking about Pride. He's pretty much talking about a Pride march. You know, a private show, if you're going to a private show, you probably know what you're walking into. Also, how would he feel about, you know, I grew up in the 90s. I remember the WWF back in the 90s. There was quite a lot of stripper adjacent shit that I feel like people were perfectly fine with back then, mainly because it was of a heterosexual persuasion. But you know, our kids not allowed to watch old WWF tapes on like Peacock? Like, are we gonna ban that next? Like, anyway, Tennessee Representative Chris Todd, who sponsored the companion House Bill 9, told his colleagues on Thursday that he was driven to introduce the measure after filing a court order last year to stop an advertised, quote, family-friendly drag show from taking place in a public park. Let's see. Well, if it's family friendly, meaning that if it fits within the purview of public displays of performance, then I don't see the problem. But of course, they're rewriting what that counts as. So now, you know, obviously. The drag performance, organized as part of the LGBTQ Pride event in Jackson, was ultimately forced to move to an indoor location and limited to spectators aged 18 years or older. Todd, on the House floor on Thursday, said that he was afterward tasked with drafting legislation, quote, that would make this much more clear for future performances. Let's see. Johnson's bill passed the Senate earlier this month on a vote 26-6. House Bill 9 passed on Thursday 74-19. It now heads to Lee's desk, where it is expected to be signed into law. The drag ban is the first in the nation to pass a state legislature. First-time violators may be charged with a Class A misdemeanor punishable by jail time for up to a year and fines totaling up to $2,500. Any subsequent offenses would be a Class E felony, carrying a sentence of 1 to 6 years in prison under state law. So let's get this clear. Let's make this incredibly clear. Tennessee is currently attempting to pass a law that will put you in jail for up to a year and fine you $2,500. Also put a misdemeanor on your record for dressing as the opposite sex. For, if you're a male, for wearing a garment of clothing that normally women wear. I really like how do I even say how ridiculous this is? Like it's actively fucking ridiculous. It's also like, I'm sorry, like I thought not to quote South Park here, but I thought this was America. I thought we had freedom here. What, like, what, not a lot, like, what counts as women's clothing? Are we gonna have like it's just, fuck's sake. Okay, banner gender, yeah, of course, yeah, lovely. Banning gender affirming healthcare for minors. Oh, let's check in with chat really quick. Why not? Let's see. Yes, drag queen story hour is disgusting. Have you ever been to a drag queen story hour? Something tells me you haven't. Why do we want kids to be trans again? We don't. I want kids to just be whatever the fuck they are. There is no such thing as a family-friendly drag queen show. Sure, for your family? Unless that entire family is 18 years old. Wait, so again, so there's no real damage. So like, at least Tennessee is protecting the kids and dangerous people who want to change gender for political agendas. Gender affirming healthcare for kids. Ew, kids don't need. Okay, that's what I thought. I didn't think you were a leftist. Got it. Makes sense. Neo-progressive. Yes. Anyway, let's see. Tennessee House legislators on Thursday also sent a measure to bar transgender youth from accessing gender-affirming health care to the governor's desk on a 77-16 vote. So if you're trans, this is definitely a this is the get the fuck out of your state time. This is the nope, it's time to move to another state. The proposed bill, which was also introduced in November by Johnson, aims to prohibit healthcare professionals from providing gender-affirming care to minors, quote, for the purpose of enabling a minor to identify with or live as a purported identity inconsistent with the minor's sex. Okay, so so the as usual, the distinction, the understanding, this only really works with an understanding that gender and sex are the same thing, which they're not. The legislation includes exceptions for youth who require treatments like puberty blockers, hormone replacement therapy, and surgeries for reasons other than the treatment of gender dysphoria or quote, mental condition, disorder, disability, or abnormality. So like obviously so if you're telling me that hormone blockers are perfectly safe for people who have mental conditions, disorders, disabilities, abnormalities, that tells me that hormone blockers aren't dangerous because they haven't been shown to be. But this is a pretty blanket admission that, like, yeah, hormone blockers aren't really dangerous. It's just trans kids might go on them to suppress their puberty until they make a decision on what gender they're actually comfortable with, and then proceed to whatever, proceed through whatever puberty they would have normally proceeded through, or if once they hit 18, when they're ready, then they can decide if they want to transition to being the opposite gender, then they would do that. But yeah, makes sense. Yeah, totally not just fucking demonic. Got it. What's up, Marky? Gender and sex are the same thing. They're not. If they were, then we wouldn't have two different words to describe them. Dipshit. Let's see. Hormone blockers are dangerous. Are fucking kidding me? You sound crazy. Uh-huh. Let's see. How about not put kids on pills? You fuck. Wait. So never give kids drugs then? Never give them antibiotics when they're sick? Never give them medicine? Got it. That makes sense. Hormone blockers have permanent effects though. So hormone blockers don't have. So okay. Let's distinguish really quick here for you, Marky. Hormone blockers do have permanent effects if you keep taking them. Hormone blockers essentially do, what they essentially do is put a pause on your puberty and your development. Meaning, so like if you're like, to give you like a really like basic example, if you are a 9-year-old boy, right? You are going to be going into puberty probably sometime around 11 to 12, maybe 10, who knows. But let's say you haven't gone through like that puberty where your voice deepens, or, you know, you start getting really taller, all the rest of the kind of the stuff that happens that puts you into being a teenage boy and then eventually into a, you know, adult man, right? What the hormone blockers are going to do is pause that development so that when you hit 10 or 11 and normally you would begin your puberty and begin developing, you just won't. You'll kind of stay where you are. You'll develop kind of in a bit of a neutral stance. You know, your development will be stunted in certain ways until you decide. Usually that decision comes within about a year or two. I think there's like a minimum for how long before you can really choose which gender to proceed with. But if you're like a 9-year-old boy and you're like, actually, like I'd feel more comfortable being a girl, then you would go on puberty blockers to pause that development until you can get the hormones that coincide with the gender that you are you know, more identify with. Usually that's not until around like 16, I believe. And there's like a few things that you would go through before you would start that. But like, you know, a child doesn't really consent to basically any of the drugs we give them, any of the what's the word, any of like the you know, vaccines that you've given them at birth. Like if you've ever seen those pictures of like you know, you ever seen those pictures of like a doll with like the million of like things that we give kids don't consent to any of that either. Like kids don't consent to the polio vaccine, and that is permanent, or at the very least it's rather long term. But like, you know, at the end of the day, these are things that are better for society and keep them safer. The hormone blockers is just a way for, because also keep in mind, if you're trans, if you're a 9-year-old boy and you might be trans and you want to transition later in life, it's going to be a lot harder to roll back your puberty and then give you those hormones to accentuate those more feminine aspects than it will be if you're still at a neutral point, or at least a more neutral point. So like, I understand what you mean. Like, yeah, they're permanent, but only for as long as you keep taking them. At any point, if you're like a 9-year-old boy and you decide like, hey, like, you know, I think I actually want to be a boy. Like, I'm actually good. Like, maybe this was just like something I thought about, considered, and decided against it. Maybe you're 10, you've been on hormone blockers for a year. You just decide, yeah, I think I'm actually good being a dude. You stop taking them and you develop as you would have normally. You might be a year late, but like, we've all heard of late bloomers before. It's really not like anything super crazy. And at the very least, there hasn't been any studies to show that there have been like serious like defects in terms of people who were on like hormone blockers for longer stints of time or started their puberty later. Because again, it's not really like a huge, like, again, it's pausing everything for the most part. Obviously you're gonna maybe develop a little bit in some ways, but yeah, like, you're not really you know, you're not gonna develop fully, basically. But let's see. Let's see. So don't put kids on hormone blockers when they're okay. I'm just gonna okay. I don't agree with giving puberty blockers to kids. Their brains is not developed enough yet to make those life-altering decisions. I mean, we can agree to disagree on that one, but like, when it comes down to it, if Like if they're not making a decision, like it's one of those things where it's like those kids, any of these kids who would go on puberty blockers before they're like 18, right? Like you would say like, oh, they're not like developed enough, they're not old enough to make those decisions. But what puberty blockers are doing is allowing them time to come to the decision on whether they'd like to transition or not transition. That's the goal. That's pretty much why puberty blockers are used more than anything else, you know? That's the thing, to be like, okay, you want to make that decision for yourself? Fine. You can go on puberty blockers. You can either go one route or go the other. It's stopping at the fork in the road and letting them decide. But anyway, let's continue. House Majority Leader William Lamberth, who sponsored a companion bill in the House, wrote in an October Tennessee op-ed that his and Johnson's bills were partially informed by reporting from the conservative podcaster, the Daily Wire columnist Matt Walsh. Ooh, excuse me, sorry. Cultural forces from the left would like us to accept an alarming new myth that gender is not a biological reality. It's not. Okay, so Matt Walsh is stupid and doesn't understand words. Gender's not sex. Sex isn't gender. If they were the same thing, we wouldn't have two words to describe them. There's obviously a reason why, like, the word sex means something different than gender. Like, if we didn't need two words, we wouldn't have two words. Gender-affirming healthcare for transgender youth and adults is considered safe and medically necessary by most major medical organizations. This is true. In September, a set of viral social media posts from Walsh claimed Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Tennessee was abusing children by providing gender-affirming medical care to minors, resulting in calls for an investigation into the hospital's transgender health clinic from state officials, including Lee. Vanderbilt University Medical Center accused Walsh of misrepresenting facts about the care provided to transgender youth. In October, the hospital said it would pause gender-affirming surgeries for transgender youth for up to several months while it conducts a review. Okay. Yeah, and I think we watched, like, Matt Walsh. He pretty much got up in, he went on to, like, the Tennessee's, hearing or whatever, and, like, the guy has no, like, medical training. He has no, like, background in understanding any of this stuff. He's just a dude who has anti-trans opinions, and that's pretty much it. They gross him out, and that's why he's been on this entire crusade, which I cannot imagine what kind of miserable human being you have to be, that, like, your life revolves around, like, the active, like targeting of other people. Like, of, like, other individuals who just identify different, who you just find icky. Like, I find a lot of people and a lot of things icky, but my life doesn't revolve around those things. My life revolves around the things I'm in favor of, the things I advocate for. Like, couldn't imagine it. LGBT advocacy groups on Thursday condemned the state's legislature's approval of the two bills and urged Lee to veto them. These extremist lawmakers have intentionally made life harder and more dangerous for trans kids. Catherine Oakley, the state legislative director and senior counsel at the Human Rights Campaign, said in a statement, "Decisions about transgender medical care should be made between trans patients, their doctors, and their families." Casey Suffredini, Vice President of Advocacy and Government Affairs at the Trevor Project, a national LGBTQ youth suicide prevention group, said on Thursday, quote, "Politicians have no business deciding these personal matters by enforcing blanket bans that defy professional guidance from every major medical and mental health association in the country." Makes sense. Let's see. So also, like, let's see, politics and yeah. So this is also one of those things where, like, Republicans will do, like, the whole, like, keep government out of, like, out of your healthcare decisions, small government. Like, they do the whole small government meme, but they want, like, government officials deciding, can you have abortions? And, like, are you allowed to get healthcare that you've chosen for yourself and you've chosen for your family? Like, I'm sorry, but this isn't small government. Like, besides just being a meme at this point, I can't help but point out, like, this is not, if you thought this was small government, this ain't it. Yeah. And also, again, the science is against them on this. Every medical professional has already explained that all of this is above board. All of it is safe. Like, there is no evidence that any of this is harmful. It's just, it's why Matt Walsh doesn't really argue on the point of like facts or statistics or medical science. It's always just cultural understanding or misunderstandings of sex and gender, and then like I just don't think boys should be allowed to be girls. And it's like, that's fine, man, that's just your opinion. Like, all right, cool, then you can have that in your house if you want. I got no problem with that. But like, there are millions of other Americans with different opinions. We urge the government to reject this harmful bill and instead work to expand access to best practice medical care for young people across Tennessee. The American Civil Liberties Union and its Tennessee affiliate, as well as the LGBTQ civil rights organization Lambda Legal, have pledged to sue the state if Lee signs either bill. Good for them. Let's see. Tennessee is poised to become the fifth state to enact a total ban on gender-affirming healthcare for transgender minors. Arizona passed a partial ban last year. A 2021 Tennessee law prohibits medical providers from providing hormone-related medications to prepubertal, Jesus, that's a word, pre-puberty, let's just go with that one, minors who are not eligible for gender-affirming medical care under standards set by the World Professional Association of Transgender Health and Endocrine Society. Fucking Christ, we need to shorten these names. The only acceptable form of gender-affirming healthcare for transgender minors who have not yet entered puberty in the state is social transition, which can include using a different name or pronouns, or wearing clothing that affirms an individual's gender identity. Okay, so let's see. Tennessee law. Oh, yeah. So let's talk about this for a minute. So if you are trans in Tennessee, essentially what the government has decided, or what they will eventually decide, is that you are not eligible, you are not allowed to seek health care that will alleviate many of the symptoms of like living with a transgender identity. Most of those being public pressure that usually results in suicide. The transgender community is at an increased risk, at a much higher risk of suicidal ideation, of mental health diseases, of a lot of like depression. Like, the transgender community faces a world that is actively antagonistic toward their existence. And Tennessee is now going to be passing a law stating that it will be illegal for even doctors who have done the science, doctors who have done the research, doctors who have affirmed that their identity is not just valid, but that there are ways for them to medically transition into the gender that makes them more comfortable in life. And Tennessee is going out of their way to pass a law to make sure that the last place, which was actual medicine for these people, let alone societal acceptance, the last place is at the medical community, a place where, whether society likes it or not, transgender people are real. They are just as real, they are just as American as everybody else, and they have a right to healthcare like everybody else. But unfortunately, it seems like in Tennessee, they're going to take away that right. And, I see a lot of people online do, a lot of people kind of, I think, try to nibble around the edges and kind of try to characterize a lot of the transgender and a lot of the anti-LGBT legislation that's going on around, all over the country as, not as, I think, the concerted and organized campaign that it really is. Understand, 5 states now have some form of ban on transgender care, meaning in 5 states in the United States of America, if you are trans, there's no option for you for getting healthcare. Imagine, if you will, If there were 5 states in the United States where being old was not something you were allowed to be, we're having a number of what's the word I'm looking for, number of likely diseases or sicknesses or degradations or whatever related to being old, were then the care for those were then outlawed. Would this not be ridiculous if we told people, hey, like, look, we don't think Alzheimer's is like real. We don't think Alzheimer's is something that society should be what's the word, supporting. Therefore, in the state of Tennessee, we are going to ban all Alzheimer's care. We would go, that's fucking insane. There are people in America who have this problem, who have this disease, who have this relationship to our society that we are writing out of that society. This would be no different than this is no different than active genocide towards a group. It just is. It's the targeting and like distinct like desire to see a group of people snuffed out. And it's just like, Republicans are going to be wanting to take back the House, or take back the Senate, I should say, take back the president in 2024. And we're going to have a lot of conversations, especially on the left, about who we support or if we should support them if they're excuse me? There's not breaking news right now. Who we should support, and like, if they're better than Joe Biden, if they're better than Donald Trump, if they're better than DeSantis, if they're this, if they're that. When it comes down to it, I think there is a distinct need to understand that regardless of, who's running, whether it's Bernie, whether it's Biden, and again, I don't like Biden. Biden's half-ass. I don't like Biden. But like, when we talk about Republicans gaining power in this country, gaining control of our federal systems, this is the type of stuff that they're going to be wanting to push forward. This is the type of stuff that they say every single day. Every day I come on, every day I get on YouTube, I go on Twitch, and every day I see Tim Pool, Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro, all the rest of these guys, all of them tell us actively every single day what they would like to do if they were in power. And it's always this type of shit. It's always marginalizing a group that's already marginalized, which, by the way, the transgender community, rather small percentage of the population, but they'll go out of their way to make their lives as miserable as possible. I don't know why. I'm assuming. I can make a quick assumption in that Republican representatives and, especially their pundits, are subhuman. They're bad people. They're actively worse for society. We get better the less of them that they are. Ben Shapiro wasn't here, if Matt Walsh wasn't here, if any of these guys wasn't spreading their utterly disgusting rhetoric, we would be in a better place. But it's not the world we live in. But either way, like, they tell us every day what they want to do. They would pass this Tennessee bill, they would pass as a national ban if they thought they could. Absolutely they would. So when the time comes around, when we're weighing, like, do we vote for Biden a second time, even though Biden's just kind of okay? What are your other options? What, you want a national anti-trans bill? You want a national anti-drag show bill? Is that really freedom? Is that like going to make things better? But either way. Anyway, it's just they tell us every time they go out there. They tell us what they want to do, and we should start listening to them and taking their threats seriously. Okay. The thing that they tell, like at the end of all YouTube videos where they tell you to like click on one of these like things to watch more videos. Yeah, I've been meaning to film one of those. So that's what I was doing. I was just setting it up to film one.